order, please.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians were shocked and appalled when the Prime Minister shut down the Justice Committee's investigation into the SNC-Lavalin corruption scandal. Serious questions remain unanswered, and key players in this affair have yet to testify. My question, therefore, is to the Chair of the Standing Committee on Ethics. Can he inform this House if the future agenda of the committee will include an investigation of this matter?
The Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have received letters from 3 members of the Ethics Committee requesting an investigation into this matter. I can confirm, as Chair of the Ethics Committee, that this investigation is in order. As always, members are welcome to submit witnesses. Any members of the public who have information of wrongdoing that may help with an investigation can come forward and submit it to the Ethics Committee without fear.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has just learned that the Ethics Committee has opened an investigation into his corruption scandal. So will he commit right here and right now to cooperate fully with this investigation and to appear and testify?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, allow me first to wish all my colleagues and Canadians a happy International Day of the Francophonie. We know how important committee work is, and here on this side of the House, we will always respect and cooperate with committees and let them do their work independently of the government. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. That's not true, Mr. Speaker. He attempted to block the Justice Committee's investigation, but we've just learned that the Ethics Committee will be investigating the corruption scandal. So once again, can the Prime Minister confirm here in this place that he will cooperate and agree to appear before the committee? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, one thing the Conservatives haven't learned, or they forgot about their 10 years in power, is that committees and members of committees are independent and they make their own decisions. Clearly, this government and the Liberal Party will always respect the independence of committee work, and we will always cooperate with the decisions of those committees. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's buying that. We all know that this Prime Minister sent in his members of that Justice Committee to shut it down. They allowed their preferred witnesses to speak more than once, but then when it came to listening to the former Attorney General complete her testimony, they blocked the investigation. They've also refused to allow Katie Telford, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Matthew Bouchard, the PM's Special Quebec Advisor, the Minister of Finance and his Chief of Staff from appearing. So now that the Ethics Committee is launching an investigation, will those individuals be allowed to testify?
Here. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's not for the Leader of the Opposition nor for the Prime Minister to decide what committees will do. Committees are masters of their own agenda, and they have to make the decisions. We saw for 10 years the Conservatives under Harper did everything they could to control committees, but we on this side of the House respect the independence of committee work. And we know that the members of committees make their own decisions. That's a principle of our democracy that we respect and they disregard. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, again, nobody's buying it. He can stop pretending. We all know that he sent his members in to block the committee's investigation at the Justice Committee. He did so knowing that there are more details to come out. The former Attorney General wrote, and I quote, "These matters are still unfolding and further clarity and information is needed." For Canadians to hear the whole truth, they need to hear additional testimony, and this investigation has to continue. So once again, will he allow the Ethics Committee to conduct a full and public investigation into his corruption scandal?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we respect committees. Committees will make their own decisions about what they want to do, and we will cooperate with them. But, Mr. Speaker, you can see just how much the Conservatives don't want to talk about the economy and the concerns of Canadians, because we put forward a budget yesterday which demonstrates that we listened to Canadians and we're investing in the middle class and communities, and they have no plan for the economy, and that's why they're trying to distract Canadians and play petty politics. We are going to remain focused on Canadians. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, instead of listening to Canadians and bringing down the cost of prescription drugs, the Liberal Prime Minister gives powerful insiders special access to get what they want. When Canadians start asking questions about just where his priorities actually lie, he dodges and dismisses. He refuses to come clean. And now the Liberals have shut down the Justice Committee investigation to get to the truth. Maybe we'll have an Ethics Justice Committee to look at it. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister guarantee that Canadians will hear from everyone involved before the next election?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, I'd like to wish a happy International Day of the Francophonie to my honourable colleague, and I'd also like to remind him about the rules of this place. The committee itself decides what its agenda is and what they're going to do as a committee. It's not for the leaders of parties to direct what committees do. We here on this side of the House, we respect the independence of committees, and we will always do so. When it comes to Pharmacare, we're very proud of the $500 million we've earmarked to help families facing rare diseases, to help them afford their drugs. That shows once again why we need a public inquiry. Mr. Speaker, Canadians pay, on average, $1,300 for health care. Yesterday, the Prime Minister had an opportunity to reduce that bill for Canadians by creating universal public Pharmacare. And what did he decide to do? He decided to buy time for the well-heeled drug companies. Why is the Prime Minister choosing to put the profits of well-heeled companies above Canadians' pocketbooks? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, that's not at all what we did. We know that Canadians shouldn't have to choose between medicine and food, and with the budget we tabled yesterday, we're laying the groundwork for a national Pharmacare program. We've created the Canadian Drug Agency, and with the provinces and territories, the agency will bargain for drugs on behalf of all Canadians, and that could reduce costs by up to $3 billion a year. In addition, we're implementing a national drug strategy. We've invested $500 million in that, and we're addressing the issue of rare diseases OC. We are as well. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Mr. Speaker, it was to be expected the budget would not reflect the needs of Canadians when it comes to housing and Pharmacare. While these folks were looking for help, the Prime Minister spent last year helping his cronies and defending his own political interests. Why does the Prime Minister only go to bat for his cronies rather than for the real change people need? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'm happy to have this opportunity to speak about our historic investments in housing. We're investing significantly to help Canadians find affordable housing. There's an incentive in the budget to help first-time home buyers to make first homes more affordable to first-time buyers, and it will make mortgage payments more affordable as well. We're also providing incentives for the construction of new rental housing units, and that should create thousands of new units. We know that it takes leadership to get housing addressed, and that's what we've been doing over the past 3.5 years.
This Liberal budget had their powerful friends covered. But it was a missed opportunity to listen to Canadians who can't afford a place to live. For people who are waiting, every delay hurts. Wait lists for co-op housing are decades long. Hundreds of people are standing in line for new rentals when they come available. Mr. Speaker, it's not too late for the Liberal Party, the government, to do right by people. Will this Liberal government build 500,000 new affordable homes now?
Here, here.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for 3 years we've been investing in housing, including with our $40 billion national housing strategy. We are building with Indigenous communities. We are building and renovating in urban centers. We are helping people afford housing, rental housing. We know there's much more to be done, and that's why we came up with an innovative measure to help first-time home buyers. That's precisely what we're doing. We are investing in housing.
Mr. Speaker, what's become abundantly clear with this cover-up is that the Prime Minister is nothing but a fake feminist. This all started when the good old boys at SNC-Lavalin got caught bribing and spending money on prostitutes, and then the Prime Minister and his good old boys said to them, "Don't worry, we'll take care of it." But then a woman, the former Attorney General, said no to the good old boys, and she was promptly fired and silenced. Why is the Prime Minister silencing women of principle while covering up for the actions of his corrupt friends?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will not be lectured by the Conservatives about women's role in our society. We have, from the very get-go, invested in promoting women, and we have defended women's reproductive rights unequivocally. We will continue to work defending women, investing in equality, for pay equity. This is a priority to us. And they are still in favor of abortion. We know that defending women's rights is what we will always do.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is really good at yelling and screaming at women, as the member from Whitby knows. And he's also a very good actor. But, Mr. Speaker, he's a fake feminist. We know that after the principled resignation of the former president of the Treasury Board, another good old boy, the Minister of Finance, said she just quit because she was good friends with the former Attorney General. And that's just what girls do. Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister and his friends thinking it's so much easier to silence women? And, Mr. Speaker, they were yelling through most...
Order. Order. I would, of course, order. Order. Members will know that members have 35 seconds to ask a question and the same to answer it. Members know that there's too much talk during the House, particularly during answers. Occasionally there is a bit during questions, but there shouldn't be either. Neither should occur. Members should show respect for the rules and institutions and traditions of this place on both sides. So I appreciate very much the honourable member's interest in the question of decorum. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party is lecturing us about women's rights, and I find it very rich. This is the party that still wants to challenge a woman's right to choose an abortion if that's what she so chooses. And this is backward thinking. We will always defend women's rights. We will always invest in women's equality, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the intelligent thing to do. We are going to build a stronger economy with women, not by sticking them in a corner.
Honourable Opposition House Leader, order.
Mr. Speaker, we know that that the Prime Minister likes to just say that women have experienced interactions with him differently. Yeah. Boy, where have we heard that one before? But Mr. Speaker, we know what the member, the Liberal member from Whitby said. She had an experience where the Prime Minister phoned her and yelled and screamed at her so loudly her husband could hear it through the phone. Why is it that he can't see when he silences women, when he yells and screams at them, when he says that their experiences are just different perspectives? He is demeaning all women and showing what a fake feminist he is.
I'm sure members will all share the concern about having quiet during question period. We've just heard. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me just say that I would be delighted if the Leader of the Opposition was trying to prove himself a better feminist than me. I think that would be a great thing for our democracy, for the Leader of the Opposition to defend women's causes, to stop opposing budgets that help women, to stop voting against investments in help to underprivileged women and organizations that help women. Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition wants to be a better feminist than me, I wish him good luck. That would be a great thing.
Order. Hill.
Here's the problem for the Prime Minister. He asked for strong women, and this is what they look like. Women who won't sacrifice their principles to cover up his corruption scandals. Women who stand up every day and refuse to back down against his abuse of our judiciary, of parliamentary committees, and more importantly, the use of the term feminist.
Yes.
Fake. I'll ask one more time. If this Prime Minister is such a feminist, why is he muzzling the former Attorney General?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to have women who are strong and outstanding, not just in cabinet, but within our caucus. Outstanding women who continue to contribute hugely every day to building a stronger Canada, where there's equality between the sexes, where there's opportunities for Indigenous people who, as partners in what we're doing. We've brought 825,000 people out of poverty since we took office because we're investing in the middle class and those who are working hard to join it.
It seems the only women the Prime Minister is proud of are those who use their reputation to do his dirty work. And that's wrong. That's not a feminist. There's a reason why he used. They experience things differently, both in the Creston groping scandal and in Lab Scam. It's because he wants women to think and take the message that if they accuse him, a powerful man, of wrongdoing, then it's them to blame. And that's wrong. Why is the Prime Minister only letting his good old boys do all the talking?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to talk about all the things this government is doing to protect and promote women's rights. We're providing health care services, sexual and reproductive health care services to women in Myanmar. We've created a position for protecting women in peace and security. We have an LC in peacekeeping operations. We're protecting and defending women's rights in Saudi Arabia, which the Conservatives never did. We've played a role in the G7.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Oh no, Mr. Speaker. What this Prime Minister is doing, the only thing that he has been doing is moving hell and high water to protect a company that stands accused of bribing Muammar Gaddafi's sons with prostitutes. And he's been doing that while muzzling strong, principled women. That's not what a feminist looks like. That's not walking the talk. Every day that he refuses to allow the Attorney General to testify and tell her story is another day he's a fake feminist. Why has he got her on a muzzle?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so happy that we're talking about women's rights because this government has invested millions and millions of dollars in helping women all across the country, and will keep on doing just that. It's the Conservatives who keep voting against our measures for equality between the sexes and giving more opportunities to entrepreneurial women. We will continue investing in women all across the country and around the world. It's a priority in order to build a better world for all.
Mr. Speaker, not only do Liberals not want the truth to come out at the Justice Committee, we now know they were bending the truth about jobs being in danger. The CEO of SNC-Lavalin just said he never told the Prime Minister that jobs in Canada were in danger. They shut down debate at committee. They misled Canadians. 2 cabinet ministers and 2 senior officials have lost their jobs. Remember the Liberals in 2015 promising transparency and accountability? What happened to them? Canadians are tired of being misled and now know they can't trust this Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing and launch an independent public inquiry, yes or no?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in 2015, we began investing in the middle class to create economic growth. That's what we promised, and that's what we've done, and that's what we continue to do. With the budget we tabled yesterday, we're showing that we are investing in more access to new housing for families. We're investing in connectivity, high-speed connections across the country. We're investing in Pharmacare to enable people to have access to drugs. And we're doing that because our plan is working. For 3 years, we've seen economic growth, which will allow us to continue investing.
Bay.
We now learn from the CEO of SNC-Lavalin that 9,000 jobs were never at risk. To say that they're going to be unemployed is not true, he said. And yet this Prime Minister has misled his caucus, the House, and Canadians day after day after day, because it was never about jobs. It was about helping his wealthy friends, about shutting down the Justice Committee, and that he has tried to cover up his interference in an independent public prosecution. He has broken faith with the Canadian people. Why is he so afraid of an investigation into his actions in making up the facts around the SNC lobbying?
Honourable Prime Minister.
What Canadians expect, Mr. Speaker, is us to work to protect jobs and workers with full respect for our institutions, and that's precisely what we're doing. We will keep investing in workers. We will keep helping Canadians, for example, with the investments we're making in training. Mr. Speaker, in the budget we tabled yesterday, Canadians will be able to have access and time for training so that they can better prepare themselves for the jobs and opportunities of the future. That is paving the way for the future for workers and Canadians. That's what we're doing. The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, what Canadians want to know is the truth. When the Prime Minister refused a public inquiry, he refused to appear before the Justice Committee, he refused to allow his inner circle to speak, and he refused to waive privilege on the former Attorney General. After the bogus investigation by the Justice Committee, will the Prime Minister agree to appear before the Ethics Committee? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, here on this side of the House, we understand that parliamentary committees choose themselves the witnesses they wish to call, and I will always respect committee's decisions. Here on this side of the House, we respect our institutions, and that's why we're investing in our institutions. We're investing in Canadians as well. We're investing in infrastructure all across the country. We're investing in affordable housing. We're investing in internet connections to help dairy farmers. We're going to keep working on behalf of Canadians. Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, there was the resignation of the Justice Minister, of the President of the Treasury Board, of the Clerk of the Privy Council, and of the Prime Minister's top advisor, who's supposed to be his buddy. And we've just learned that another Liberal member has quit the caucus. And the Prime Minister is hiring private law firms at taxpayer expense. And he says there's nothing to see here. Will the Prime Minister agree to appear before the Ethics Committee? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. What the Conservatives should know is that committees themselves decide which witnesses to call. We will always participate when called to do so, but yesterday in our budget, we demonstrated that we're focused on Canadians. Let's let the Conservatives play petty politics. We're focused on the economy. We've created 900,000, Canadians have created 900,000 jobs in the past 3 years, and we have the lowest unemployment rate in 40 years. The Conservatives have no plan whatsoever for the economy. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, for a year and a half, the Conservatives have stood up hand on their hearts saying that they're protecting jobs for SNC-Lavalin workers. But the CEO has stated that he never talked about 9,000 jobs being at risk. It's a direct contradiction of what the Prime Minister is saying. And the Ethics Committee is going to investigate this scandal. We've just learned that. Will the Prime Minister agree to testify? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Since 2015, we've done everything we could to protect jobs and workers, and will continue to do so. Since 2015, Canadians have created over 900,000 new jobs all across the country. But not all Canadians have access to the necessary training to get those new jobs. So with our budget we tabled yesterday, we've created a Canadian training benefit which will help workers find time and money to improve their skills. This is a measure that will greatly help workers and businesses. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, when the Globe and Mail broke the story about the Liberal scandal, the SNC-Lavalin scandal, what has happened? The former Attorney General lost her job. The former President of the Treasury Board lost her job. And now a Liberal member is quitting the Liberal caucus. 1, 2, 3 women. That's the so-called record of a feminist Prime Minister. The Ethics Committee is going to meet to study this SNC-Lavalin scandal. Will the Prime Minister agree to give his version of events, yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will always cooperate with committees. They choose what studies to undertake, but at the same time, we know that investing in Canadians, investing in the Canadian economy, as we promised to do since 2015, it has worked. We've seen economic growth, which we hadn't seen under the Harper years. We've seen job growth, which we didn't see under Harper. But unfortunately, the Conservatives are still caught up in the same Harper approach. And that's why they don't want to talk about the economy. They don't want to talk about the budget. They would rather play petty politics. We are going to remain focused on Canadians.
5 million students around the world took to the streets in a climate strike last Friday. Students from Canada, from coast to coast to coast, flooded the streets with a clear message. There is no planet B. We have 12 years to avert climate disaster, and climate leaders don't buy pipelines. Exactly. Our children are demanding real action and an end to empty promises. Budget 2019 continues to subsidize big oil. Will the Prime Minister admit that Harper's emission targets won't cut it, and that buying a 65-year-old pipeline isn't climate action?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was so pleased to see how concerned young people are about the future of our planet, because this is a concern we share with them on this side of the House. That's why we put a price on pollution. That's why we have brought in an historic plan to protect oceans. And that is why we are investing in green energy and in new technology to help our economy. We will always tackle climate change. That is a priority for this government, just as it is a priority for young people throughout the country. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, last Friday, 1.5 million students went on strike for the future of their planet, their own future. I was at the demonstration in Montreal along with a human wave of 100,000 individuals. It was so beautiful to see thousands of young people rising up and demanding that we act. With yesterday's budget, though, the Liberals have let them down. The government continues along with its outdated policies and its subsidies to oil companies and purchasing an old pipeline. Why do the Liberals refuse to listen to young people who have understood the urgency of the situation? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will always listen to young people and work with them to protect the environment and build a better world. In Budget 2019, we have announced a new home retrofit program to help Canadians reduce their energy bills. We are making electric vehicles less costly for Canadians. We are also building infrastructure to support that. And the NDP continues to oppose the environment with the economy, but we are growing the economy while protecting the environment.
Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, our government laid out the next step in our plan to invest in families and to support the middle class and those working hard to join it. A key part of the budget are new measures to make housing more affordable. Could the Prime Minister update the House on what we are doing to help Canadians find an affordable place to call home?
Bravo. Prime Minister.
I'd like to thank the member for Surrey Newton for his hard work. Canadians told us that too many young families have been excluded from the housing market. And so in Budget 2019, we are tackling this issue. There will be a first-time home buyer incentive. And under that, Canada will save hundreds of dollars each month on their mortgage payments. We are increasing funding for the construction housing market, and that will help housing. We will continue to support that sector. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, there are unanswered questions. Who said that? The former Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, the former Treasury Board President said she was not pleased with how this was dealt with. Canadians want the Prime Minister shed light. Will the Prime Minister stop hiding the truth and allow his senior civil servants and himself to appear before the Ethics Committee on this political interference? The Honourable Prime Minister, as I said, we will always respect requests of the committee, and it is up to the committee to decide what work they want to do and what witnesses they want to call. Now, with respect to this, it's pretty interesting that the Conservatives, who have always wanted to talk about the economy, are refusing to talk about the economy to Canadians today. We brought in a historic budget. Why, Mr. Speaker? And why are they refusing to talk about the economy? Because they have no plan. It's just the same old Harper approach. We created 900,000 new jobs throughout the country. We reduced unemployment, and we lifted people out of poverty. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, if someone's afraid of something, well, it's the Prime Minister. He's afraid to talk about political interference in our justice system. He's afraid to allow the former Attorney General to testify. What is he so afraid of? 4 people have resigned. This must be pretty serious. Will the Prime Minister appear before the Ethics Committee? Yes or no? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I've already answered that question. The reality is that we have Conservatives before us here who at one point in time were more concerned about Canadians and the economy, but they seem to have lost that concern. You see, for 10 years, their approach in giving benefits to the wealthiest and in cutting into programs didn't work. It didn't work either for balancing the budget or for encouraging economic growth for Canadians. Now, for 3 years, we've been investing in the middle class. We've been investing in communities, and that is delivering positive results, not just for the Canadian economy, but for Canadian families, too. And we're going to continue to do that. They have nothing to say, do they?
The member for Chilliwack Hope.
Here's some quotes on the Liberal SNC-Lavalin scandal. Quote, "There's no solution here that does not involve some interference." Gerald Butts. "I think he's going to find a way to get it done one way or another." Michael Wernick. "We don't want to debate legalities anymore." Prime Minister Chief of Staff. "Questions remain unanswered." The former Attorney General. "I have lost confidence in how the government has dealt with this matter." The former President of the Treasury Board. "The Prime Minister didn't have the courage to appear at the Justice Committee before he stood behind the human shields of his Liberal members who shut it down. Will he have the guts to show up at the the Ethics Committee to answer for his involvement in this scandal.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to read from some quotes on our budget. Valérie Plante, Mayor of Montreal, said that what this budget shows is that Ottawa wants to assist municipalities to develop structural projects worthy of the 2020th century. Another quote, excellent announcement to support electric vehicles. The Canadian Federation of Black Communities said that they support the implementation of the official decade for order, please. I've heard the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier quite often today, even though he didn't have the floor. Now, I quite appreciate the sound of his voice, but not in this way.
Here's some quotes, Mr. Speaker. The former Attorney General, I quit. The former President of the Treasury Board, I quit. The former top advisor to the Prime Minister, I'm gone. The former clerk of the Privy Council, I quit. Mr. Speaker, these members have all quit because of the scandal that emanated from the very top of this government. The Liberals have tried to shut this down time and time again. Will the Prime Minister and his officials finally have the decency to show up at the Ethics Committee and do their job, explain to Canadians what they're so afraid of when it comes to the SNC-Lavalin scandal?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, we will always cooperate with parliamentary committees that decide independently what studies they want to undertake. But allow me to continue with quotes. Perry Bellegarde of the Assembly of First Nations said that this federal budget shows that there will be significant and sustained investments to advance the priorities of First Nations. And throughout the country, Mr. Speaker, we have heard constituents and Canadians say, thank you for investments in the middle class. Thank you for access to affordable housing. Thank you for investments in infrastructure, in high-speed internet. That will help us.
Kootenai, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this month I wrote to the Minister of Finance about the struggles young Canadians are facing because of student debt, like putting off starting a family or buying a home. I encouraged the Minister to follow the lead of British Columbia's NDP government, which stopped charging interest on student loans last month. Instead, the Liberals are proposing a half measure of simply reducing interest rates in their budget. Post-secondary education should not be a debt sentence. Why are the Liberals choosing to hurt young Canadians and their chance to build a better future?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the investments that we have made in young people throughout country over the past 3 years, and we'll continue with that in this budget. Young Canadians are the most connected, educated, and diversified population in Canada. We have been making post-secondary studies more affordable since 2015, including measures for students who do not have to reimburse their loans until they're earning a significant amount per year. We've also reduced interest rates on student loans for the first 6 months, and what that means that students will be able to save up to $2,000. We know that investing in young people is investing in the future. The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and his Minister of Social Development said in voices full of compassion that they would enhance EI sick benefits in that year. That was in 2016. In budget 2017, nothing. Budget 2018, nothing. Budget 2019, still nothing. That was their last opportunity to keep that promise, but they preferred to let down hundreds of thousands of sick people who need more than 15 weeks to get better. Why did the Prime Minister betray them? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have invested in helping family caregivers, in helping families who have relatives with rare diseases. We are putting money into reducing the costly medication for these rare diseases, and we will always be helping workers. We have introduced the Canada Skills Program now that will provide people with money to improve their skills. That includes 4 weeks of training over 4 years and up to $1,000 to support them. The labour market is evolving, and we want to make sure that Canadians are ready for it.
Lying to a law officer is an offense under Section 139 of the Criminal Code, which prohibits obstructing, perverting, or defeating the course of justice. The Prime Minister told the former Attorney General on September 17th that if she did not immediately shelve the charges into SNC-Lavalin, the company's headquarters would jet to London. Today, the CEO of the company indicated he never said that, and it's not true. Why did the Prime Minister state a blatant falsehood to get charges dropped against SNC-Lavalin?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what the member opposite just said is entirely false.
Carleton.
Actually, it's entirely true, and I can prove it. Not only did the former Attorney General testify that he said the company would leave Montreal without a deferred prosecution agreement, he made the mistake of repeating the same falsehood in public, at his press conference. It's on the record. So he can now deny what he said in front of 35 million Canadians, or he can finally stand on his feet and begin telling the truth. He said to the former Attorney General the headquarters would be gone if she did not immediately shelve the charges. We now know that was a blatant falsehood. Why did he state a falsehood to get charges dropped against a company?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, since the very beginning of this matter, we have been acting in a way to protect workers throughout the country, whether it be in Newfoundland, whether it be in Regina, whether it be in Ontario, whether it be in Quebec, or in Alberta. We are always going to defend and stand up for jobs while respecting our institutions. And we have had to think about how to protect Canadian jobs, and we are going to continue to do that, including in this historic budget that we brought forward yesterday, that the Conservatives do not want to talk about at any cost.
Order. The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, he's not denying he said it now, that he just realized that he accidentally blurted out in a press conference. He told the former Attorney General the headquarters would be gone if she did not immediately shelve the charges against that company. It was a falsehood. It is impossible. The company is bound to stay in Montreal under a $1.5 billion loan deal with the Quebec pension plan. It just signed a 20-year lease and renovated its headquarters for its 2,000 employees there. It was completely false, and yet he said it to try and get corruption charges dropped. Why?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite has just betrayed himself. He's preoccupied by wealthy people, but we are concerned about the workers in those companies, workers who work hard throughout the country to support their families, to support their communities. That's what we always do. The Conservatives have always wanted to give advantages and benefits to the wealthiest. However, we invest in the middle class and all those working hard to join it. And that delivers results for Canadians.
The honourable member for Dartmouth Cole Harbour. Order. Order.
Mr. Speaker, as you know, Nova Scotia has the highest number of seniors per capita in all of Canada. And in case you didn't hear, yesterday's budget included new measures to better support seniors and make their lives more affordable. Bravo. Can the Prime Minister please update this House on how Budget 2019 will help seniors across the country, and especially in my riding of Dartmouth Cole Harbour?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Dartmouth Cole Harbour for his support for seniors. Under Budget 2019, there will be an enhancement of the GIS earnings exemption. More than 300,000 seniors throughout the country will be able to keep more of their money in their own pockets, money that was earned through hard work. We are going to continue to ensure a quality of life for our seniors. The Conservatives increased our retirement age to 67, but we're looking after these people by bringing that age back down to 65 and investing directly in them.
Member for Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, in the last 3 days, this Prime Minister has broken so many of his election promises. He promised transparency and yet shut down the only public investigation into this scandal. He promised to respect committees. After what happened to Justice Committee, we know that that's not happening. He promised a balanced budget. It's sure not going to happen under his watch. And today we learned that he misled Canadians across this country when he said they needed to protect 9,000 jobs. It was is clearly, according to the CEO, false. Liberals themselves are coming up and telling me how disappointed they are. When's he going to end the...
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can't tell you how pleased I am that the member mentioned the word budget in her question. So that gives me an opportunity to underscore the fact that on the contrary to the Conservatives, our approach invests in Canadian. It invests in the middle class, and it has worked, Mr. Speaker. Canadians have created more than 900,000 jobs over the past 3 years. We have the lowest unemployment in 40 years. We have lifted hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty, and that's because we're investing in Canadians, contrary to the Conservatives who want to cut.
Be South.
Mr. Speaker, when challenged about the scandal of political interference, a scandal that has even drawn the attention of the anti-bribery unit of the OECD, the Prime Minister has repeatedly cited jobs as the reason. He stood in this House and said it again today. Well, it turns out that claim isn't true. He's broken faith with Canadians. Will the Prime Minister finally do what's right and call an independent public inquiry so Canadians can learn the truth?
Hello, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we respect the work being done by committees. The Justice Committee spent 5 weeks hearing from witnesses who had an opportunity to speak freely about the issue under consideration. We also support the work of the Ethics Commissioner, an officer of Parliament who is there to do the necessary work to enlighten Canadians on what is happening above and beyond politics in this House. Mr. Speaker, we know that Canadians can trust their institutions, and we will continue to be concerned about their needs. The Honourable Member for Hull-Elmer. Mr. Speaker, our government's budget announces concrete support to allow Canadians to get the skills and training they need to succeed so they can find and keep good, high-quality, well-paid jobs. Can the Prime Minister tell the House how Budget 2019 will help Canadian workers? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for Hull-Elmer for his work. Since 2015, our plan has been working. Canadians have created more than 900,000 new jobs throughout the country. However, not everyone has access to the opportunities they need to succeed. That's why Budget 2019 is introducing the new Canada Training Benefit. Over 4 years, that means there will be 4 weeks available, 4 weeks of leave available for training and up to $1,000 to help them in income support. The labour market is evolving, and we are going to help Canadians of all ages so they are ready for that changing labour market. We know we have to do that.
Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said that the unrelenting pressure on the former Attorney General to grant SNC-Lavalin a DPA was all about jobs. And yet today, we also know that that's not true. As the CEO of SNC-Lavalin says the firm never cited 9,000 jobs as a reason for deserving the DPA. Will this Prime Minister tell the truth? Will he, instead of continuing to mislead Canadians, commit to this House to testifying and tell the truth at committee?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is talking about jobs, but I want to tell you that we're very proud of the fact that Canadians created 900,000 good new jobs over the past 3 years. That is something that Conservatives were never able to do under their 10 years because they never understood. The Conservatives think that giving advantages and benefits to the wealthiest is what they should do, including cutting programs for the rest. So that's not what works. That failed for 10 years, and that's why yesterday's budget and our approach invests. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes, Verchères. Mr. Speaker, 50% of our taxes are sent to Ottawa, but the government finds the way to ignore 100% of Quebec's demands. not 1 cent to reimburse the money we spent for new immigrants, not 1 cent for health transfers, as if we can afford to neglect Quebec patients. Can the government explain how it's possible to have a $20 billion in debt and refuse to help Quebec? The Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, in terms of the blue line that he mentioned, the money actually is being invested. Now, with respect to Quebec's demands, we know that dairy producers have been concerned about the new trade agreements that we have signed. And under Budget 2019, we're providing concrete solutions for the problems that producer families are facing. We are investing into supply managed groups, into our food policy, into tax relief and regulatory relief, including internet bandwidth in rural communities. And we'll continue to support our producers throughout the country and in Quebec.